You can access the entire episode now on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, Rokfin, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. What permaculture is, for those that may not be familiar with this, tell us a little bit about your understanding of this.
Sure, it's a design science for increasing carrying capacity. Basically, what we do is we look at how we can read the land, what does the land need and want, and how can we create systems of abundance so that we can have more generated from it. And it's based on a set of principles and ethics. I can actually share those if
oh yeah, for sure,
you want to see them. So these are the principles and the ethics. So the principles that in permaculture, Bill Mollison and David Holmgren, Bill Mollison was a teacher at a university in Australia, and he studied Indigenous people worldwide, and he found out that there was like these three common permaculture ethics: earth care, people care, fair share, and then they added, there's another one in there, it's called transition. So earth care, you take care of the earth, it takes care of you. People care, you're out there, making sure that people are doing well and thriving. And then fair share means basically like you put in your fair share of energy while also making sure that there's abundance so that there's enough to share with each other, so you grow more than what you need. And then also you think about fair share into the future, like how are you going to increase abundance and fertility for future generations rather than deplete it. So, thinking fair share into the future as well, I think 7 generations or more, And then the transition ethic is all about utilizing things that maybe aren't sustainable now because you're setting up systems that are going to have long-lasting generative, regenerative effects. So it's, using gas, maybe gas isn't necessarily most, or diesel or whatever, isn't necessarily the most regenerative resource, but you can do a lot with the tractor. So you might set up some really great water systems and things like that using that. So those are the ethics. And so once you have that as a foundation, you can build from there. And then there's all these principles. I won't get too deep into all of them, but when you're doing a design, basically you follow the principles here. So every design.
Alana, you're breaking up a little bit right now. I'm not sure if there's anything you would be able to adjust there, but for the past about 10-15 seconds we couldn't really hear what you were saying.
Oh, okay. Is it better now?
Yeah, better now.
Okay. I have Starlink, so it gets a little cloudy, and but as of today or yesterday, we have fiber optic, but it's not set up yet, so soon.
Nice.
But anyway.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm feeling blessed. Especially because we're super rural right now.
All good.
So these principles, I would say permaculture principles guide your designs, right? So as I said, it's a design science. And that means that you're going to be thinking about things and then like you look at these ethics, you make sure that all of your designs are caring for these ethics. And then you go through the principles and say, okay, well, I'm going to observe before I interact. I'm going to like go out there, before I change things, right? I'm going to go out there, I'm going to watch, where does the sun go? Where does the wind blow? What kind of soil am I dealing with? What's the ecology around me?
Yeah, I want to stop you right there because earlier you said read the land, and I found this very interesting, and it seems like a very important point to start with. Tell us a little bit about how you read the land and what that means.
Sure. And it's different for lots of different people. So one of the things about permaculture is you want it to be applicable across all cultures. So, there's some people that take it a little bit to different spiritual places, and that's cool. But like when you're doing it from like the point of view of like straight up science, you try to keep it real, bland or whatever. But one example of that, so that's why I start with that, because, you can read the land physically and you can read the land energetically. And so one of the things you're going to look for when you're physically reading the land is where is the water flowing? What kind of weeds do you have? Because weeds are indicators for soil. So you can see a lot of what's going on underground based on what's growing. And then you can see the kind of, and that includes trees. Like, do you have climax species trees like oaks, things that are longer lasting? Do you have quicker species like poplars or tulip poplars? Like those are pioneer trees. They're going to have a shorter lifespan and have a softer wood. So this is going to tell you also about where your ecosystem's at. Reading the way that the sun goes across your land. That's a big part of it too, because that's going to show you where you can and can't grow gardens or so forth, right? And so you can also see like what kind of insects or animals are on the land. And then if you have like a strong intuitive connection to nature, you can read it energetically too, and you can feel into what the land is calling for. Has there been, there's also things like trauma that might have occurred on different pieces of land, and maybe there's something that needs to happen before you can even do anything, so that you're not dealing with like the repercussions of karmatic experiences there, and you can like clear that. Like for example, at our farm in Costa Rica, we had this Mayan man come, and he did this whole prayer in Mayan, like talking to the spirits of the land and like asking for permission essentially for us to do what we did. And so that was, but that's not all permaculturists are going to do that. Right. There's different, it depends on what you're comfortable with, Do you believe in that? Like, do you believe in elementals and like spirits of the land or not? And if you don't, well, at least read the land, physically.
Yeah, it's pretty much just like any other practice or ritual or something that you are going to be doing to try and better yourself. You make it your own, and you do this with everything creative and intuitive that you do, right?
Exactly. And I mean, here on our property here in East Tennessee, we're doing a community farmstead, and we found this beautiful piece of property with like 45 fruit trees, 5 fish ponds, organic soils, infrastructure that was already here, like buildings and barns and stuff like that, and a cemetery from the 1800s.
Nice.
And before we got here, I had this dream that the kids were getting attacked by ghosts from the cemetery. And so first thing I did when I got here is I just went to the cemetery, burned some sage, said some prayers, was like, hey, I'm not here to harm you guys. Like, we're just here to be at peace, and, offered some stones, and we haven't had any problems. And of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that I like fixed it, but for me, I'm like, well, it doesn't hurt, you should try.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so that's about observing and interacting. Like, all those are examples. Like, I didn't jump in and say, okay, I'm going to put this, road right here, and I'm going to build this. Because to be honest, I have seen so many projects where they make big mistakes doing something like putting a road in where the water is going to erode it. I saw one property that they had to sell it because they could no longer connect it, because the road turns to a river in the rainy season, and now you've got erosion going all up, and you can't even go down to the buildings that were down there. Right. So, or somebody builds a house on a really beautiful cliff far enough back, they think, well, it's not, and next thing you know, there's a landslide. Now the house is going to fall down, and there's nothing they can do, and they sunk hundreds of thousands of dollars into it. So that's one of the things in here. You've got one of the principles is use small and slow solutions, because you're building on your solutions. When you make a small mistake, it's a small mistake that you learn a lot from, but you make a big mistake, you're still learning, but it's taking a lot of energy and time and money. So, so when you're following this is kind of like a roadmap. These principles are a roadmap for your design. So you're like catching and storing energy. What are you doing that through solar panels or planting trees or plants? Then that catch and store sunlight, or your catching water from your rooftops, whatever.
I wanted to ask you what are the different ways that we can do that? You mentioned solar energy, which is a pretty obvious one, and you say that we can do that with different types of trees as well.
Yeah, because ultimately plants are catching sunlight and turning it into physical mass. It's what they eat. And then so you're catching the energy of the sun and turning it into a garden or an orchard or meat, because you're planting it for your animals and then they're eating it. So that's, or, even like the Tesla energy. I mean, you're catching with copper rods, you're catching the energy, right, that's in the earth, and you're storing it into something else if you have a battery. So I don't know if you can do that, but I imagine, but you're catching and storing energy is the idea.
Right.
And then you've got like obtaining a yield. So everything you do, you want some kind of yield. A yield is basically like a harvest. And that can be done, like, for example, in a social element. That means like let's say you have a bunch of volunteers coming through, and one of them is an artist. You could put that artist to work on a shovel, digging swales or trenches or whatever.